live channel episode, and today is the 11th of May 2021, and it is the it has been the state opening of Parliament, which happened earlier on today in the UK. It was live streamed, I do believe, on the BBC internet, on their YouTube channel. You may also be able to find clips elsewhere, but it happened earlier on today, and I want to talk about it in this video. There are a few kind of notable changes that happened this year due to, of course, the coronavirus restrictions, all to do with keeping people safe, and of course the social distancing and all of the rules that are adhering to all of the rules that are still in place here in the UK. So this is a live chat, so I will be trying to answer as many viewer comments and questions as possible. So if you do have any really good questions that you'd like me to try and answer, please obviously type them. And I'm just going to kind of crack on with it, really. So I think this state opening of Parliament almost kind of crept up on people a little bit by surprise, including myself. I knew one was coming up, but to be honest, it hadn't been particularly well publicised here in the UK. Normally, there's a little bit of a kind of a run up to it, and I think the reason why that wasn't the case this year, why it was kind of kept a little bit on the down low, was to kind of stop crowds forming, because normally there is a full carriage procession and people normally line the streets waiting to see the Queen pass by in the carriage, or all of the regalia such as the imperial state crown, which I have a little model of here. So I think it was kind of kept on the down low, literally to kind of stop these crowds forming, which of course could spread coronavirus restrictions and encourage people to break the rules. So I'm thinking that's why it was kind of kept on the down low a little bit. But anyway, a few days ago I learned that it was happening, and I was kind of quite happy, because last year we didn't have a state opening of Parliament because of COVID. So it was kind of nice to have a little bit of normality back, although it was very, very, very stripped back. Now, we did have something similar, actually. I'm just going to my notes. It was the 2017 state opening of Parliament. By the way, we typically have one every year. It marks the parliamentary session. Some years there has been 2 years of a parliamentary session, but at the start of a new parliamentary session, or almost immediately after a new government has been elected, after a general election, we have a state opening of Parliament. And the 2017 one was very, very different, because that was the kind of year of Brexit, and they didn't have enough time to prepare all the ceremonials for the state opening of Parliament. So that was the first time we had a stripped back state opening, where the Queen wore that kind of blue dress with the hat that some people said resembled the European Union flag. So that's when we first saw a kind of a Queen attending a state opening in day dress, what we kind of call a day dress. Then the next opening was in 2019, because it was a 2-year parliamentary session, and the Queen was back into her normal robes. The only notable difference was that she wasn't wearing the crown. It was the first year that she didn't wear the imperial state crown, and that is to do with its weight. I'll tell you a little bit more information. This is just a little mini replica. It's not even to scale or anything. But anyway, this is like just a little example. It's actually a Christmas tree decoration, but I thought I'd kind of show you. Anyway, it's really, really heavy, and the Queen has borne this crown for the state opening of Parliament for so long, and I think with a little concession to age, for the first time ever, it was carried on a cushion in front of her in 2019. And I thought at the time, we're probably never going to see the Queen wearing the imperial state crown at a state opening of Parliament. And of course, get to this year, and it's back to day dress because of COVID, and she wasn't wearing the crown either. It was still being carried in front of her. So just a little bit, we have had some different state openings in recent years. So just a little bit of information before we get into it about the state opening of Parliament. So it is, as I said, it marks the formal start of the parliamentary year, and the Queen's speech sets out the government's agenda for the coming session, outlining proposed policies and legislation. It's the only regular occasion when the three constituent parts of Parliament, the Sovereign, the House of Lords and the House of Commons meet. And it is important to note that the Queen's speech is not written by the Queen. It's not the Queen's agenda. It is the government of the day. That is what the Queen is reading. So, as I said, the state opening of Parliament took place today, but it was very, very stripped back. It's a ceremonial event, and as I said, it normally attracts such large crowds because people want to see the Queen, and they want to see the regalia being carried in the carriages, and it is always typically on TV. But the government obviously said that in light of the pandemic, this year's state opening has been adapted and reduced in the ceremonial elements and scale, and also the people attending. Normally, the House of Lords and the House of Commons and the whole Houses of Parliament are packed. They're normally rammed. Every little tiny nook and cranny is filled with a person or somebody. All the long galleries are normally bedecked with people in their finery, and the women in their beautiful hats. Not this year. It was very, very stripped back. Even members of Parliament, there were only a select amount allowed to enter the House of Lords and of course the Queen's chamber where she was giving the speech. All the ceremonial elements were very stripped back. There were not the guards lining the staircase. The Queen herself didn't actually even arrive at the state opening in a state Bentley. She was actually in a Range Rover, I think it was. And Charles and Camilla left from Clarence House and turned up in one of the fleet Audis. So again, just a very, very kind of stripped back day dress. We'll get to the clothes in a moment. But yes, normally the event begins with the Queen's procession from Buckingham Palace to Westminster, escorted by the household cavalry. Now, we did see a motorcade, if you like, from Buckingham Palace. The Queen actually left Windsor this morning, so she hadn't stayed at the palace overnight, ready for the event. She was actually at Windsor in the morning, travelled to Buckingham Palace, and then left the palace to go to Westminster in the motorcade. It is believed, of course, that she went straight back to Windsor after the event, and of course Charles and Camilla went back to Clarence House. So the Queen, when she arrives at the Sovereign's entrance, it's kind of like a little side entrance. I have actually been there myself, and I've actually walked up the steps, which was incredible. They normally roll out the carpet, that kind of blue carpet that kind of lines the stairs. This year we didn't see the Queen get out of the car. Normally the cameras are there. We normally see the Queen coming down. In recent years, probably maybe 4 years now, she hasn't walked up the stairs. She's taken the side lift. Normally we don't see her getting into the lift, but we do normally see her coming out of the carriage. This year we didn't see that. They cut to a segment where the Union Jack was being lowered and the Queen's Royal Standard was being released above the Houses of Parliament, because obviously when the Queen is in residence, the Union flag comes down and the Royal Standard is flown instead. So it cut to a segment of that rather than the Queen getting out of the car. Of course, she was not this year accompanied by a member of the family. In recent, and obviously in the past, she's been escorted by her consort, which of course was Prince Philip. In 2017, that was, I think, his last state opening of Parliament. No, 2016, I think must have been, because it was Charles accompanying the Queen in 2017. So, normally there is the consort's chair. Now, one of the changes that you may have noticed is there was only one throne. That is because she no longer has a consort. She's a reigning monarch that doesn't have a consort. And although Prince Philip was not officially the prince consort, he was still her consort. So there has been 2 thrones, and I do believe, I think I read a stat that it was the first time in 150 years there has not been a consort's throne or chair next to the sovereign's throne. And I think that's because every reigning monarch for 150 years has had a consort, I do believe. So I'm not sure. I haven't checked that fact, but anyway, that's what I've heard. So the throne has gone. It's just one single throne. In whilst Philip was alive, Prince Charles kind of deputised for him since Philip's last appearance, and that's why Charles was seen seated next to the Queen. However, now that Philip is no longer with us, there will only be one throne. Charles and Camilla were seated on very opulent kind of chairs to the side of the Queen, and I think that's how it will go from now on. I think Charles and Camilla will accompany the Queen to any future state openings, and Charles and Camilla will sit to the side, and the Queen will have that central throne. There was a table this time. Of course, that was another coronavirus security measure to limit the amount of people that had to touch kind of papers and elements and bags. Normally the speech is put in a bag and the Queen takes it from the purse. It was actually on the table, so you saw the Queen reach for the speech. It is important to note that this event, everybody in attendance had been vaccinated. I don't know whether they'd been second vaccinated, but at least everyone, it said, had had a vaccination. Also, everybody had been coronavirus tested. So everyone would have had some kind of coronavirus test, I think up to 48 hours prior to the event. So it was a very safe event. I don't think you could have got safer. People, like I said, had been vaccinated. They were socially distanced. They had had the COVID test, and they were also wearing masks when obviously required to do so. So I don't think you could have had it any safer if you'd even tried. And I think it was very important for this to go ahead because it is the opening and the renewal of our kind of unofficial constitution, because the UK doesn't have a written constitution. So it's very, very important that this went ahead. I'm glad it did. And also, the Queen is absolutely remarkable to have been able to pick herself up and literally put duty before self. She obviously is grieving. She's just lost her husband of all those years, and she still put her country before herself. And I think the country really thanks the Queen for doing that, but also I think the country, there's a general feeling that we want her to have time, to be able to grieve the loss of her husband. And, if she wishes to take some time, nobody is going to begrudge the Queen a little bit of time. But things like this are so very important, and the Queen obviously felt that it was her duty to go out there and still perform that role and that function, which is vitally important for the United Kingdom. The Queen, I think, in observation, she looked like she'd lost a bit of weight. I think she still looked healthy, and she still looked very happy, but I think she had noticeably lost a little bit of weight. Obviously, there has been a lot of stress in her life, obviously leading up to Philip's hospitalization, that whole period when he was in the hospital. There was a lot of stress and strain going on at that time, and then of course his sad loss as well, and then obviously getting ready for the funeral. It's all been quite a lot to bear, and I think I just reached 10,000 steps, and I think it has taken its toll. She has lost a bit of weight, but I don't think anyone can blame her. She looked amazing. She was recycling an outfit that she had previously worn to Royal Ascot, I think in 2013. And I think it's either a Stuart Parvin or an Angela Kelly, but I haven't seen any official release on who designed it. If you have seen anywhere, do let me know. But it's either Stuart Parvin or Angela Kelly. The hat looked fantastic. She was wearing her aquamarine clips with the diamonds. She looked stunning. She sounded really good as well. I don't know whether she's have a little bit of hay fever. I sensed a little sniffle. I can relate. I can absolutely relate, because I've had the little sniffles as well. So I guessed that she was perhaps having a little bit of hay fever going on. So she delivered the speech, and of course, as I said, the speech is not her speech, although it's called the Queen's Speech. It is actually written by the government of the day, and it outlined all the different kind of legislation that the government want to tackle in the next parliamentary session, which I think is 1 year. I don't think it's going to be a 2-year parliamentary session. I'm not going to go into the content of the Queen's speech because that is the political side of it. And I'm not going to get into, politics and policies. But the Queen's speech outlined what the government want to do in Parliament over the next week. All aspects of the Queen's speech will be debated, so that's going to take precedent and of importance in the House of Commons over the next week. So when the Queen, as I said, leaves, a new parliamentary session begins and Parliament gets back to work, which is why the Queen's speech is so important. Members of both houses debate the content of the speech and agree an address in reply to Her Majesty's gracious speech. Each house continues the debate over the planned legislative programmes for several days, typically kind of going up to a week, looking at different subject areas. The Queen's speech is voted on by the Commons, but rarely in the Lords. Traditions surrounding the state opening and the delivery of a speech by the monarch can be traced back as far as the 16th century. So this is a very, very old tradition here in the UK and England. The current ceremony dates back from the opening of the rebuilt Palace of Westminster in 1852 after a fire that occurred in 1814, and Prince Albert, Queen Victoria's Prince Consort, he had a big hand in kind of redesigning the Palace of Westminster. I'm going to stop and go to a few comments. Oh, I have some. Welcome Paula Smith to the household. She's joined the little club on YouTube. And thank you so much to the United Kingdom of Scotland, who has donated £2.99. Thank you so much. I'm just going to kind of go up now and read some comments. I think I've answered JL's comment, which was why was there only one chair. I've answered that because it was, of course, the consort's throne, and we no longer have a Queen's consort. Jill says Her Majesty looked beautiful today. A little frail, which is to be expected. Yeah, I mean, she's 95, and I think her mind is as sharp as ever. She's very much like my own nan. Mind, absolutely fine, but she's still got a 95-year-old body. However, a 95-year-old body that I think, lots of people even younger than her would kill to have, because I think just this week she was seen photographed on a horse. I mean, how many 95-year-olds can ride a horse? I mean, she is remarkable. Her brain is completely intact, and I don't think there is any chance of a regency at the moment. I think, Charles is ready and able, but there is no provision in the Regency Act for just old age. You have to fit one of 3 criteria, which of course is if you are absent, for example, overseas, when monarchs used to go overseas to battle, or they might go on a big, long foreign trip, then you could have like a temporary regency. If your body is gone, for example, if you've had an accident or you're in hospital or medically there's something wrong with you, you can have a regent. And the third one is that you've lost your mind. If you are mentally incapable of fulfilling the role, then the Regency Council can appoint the regent, which of course would be Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales, the Queen's heir and successor. But there is no provision under the Act for old age. So if the Queen, for example, wanted to retire, there is the option of abdication, which I think the Queen would never, ever do. Or she could go to, she could command the Regency Council to go to Parliament to try and pass some kind of change to the Regency Act, which would allow for retirement in old age. That has not happened, so I don't think that's going to be an option. I think what we're going to see is more of a slow handover, almost like like a very quiet regency where the Queen is still Queen and monarch and fulfilling the functions, but that Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales, is taking on more and more and more of the duties, along with the Duke of Cambridge and the Duchess of Cambridge, and of course the Duchess of Cornwall as well, Camilla. So I think that kind of unit is going to take on a lot more of the burden of state from the Queen, whilst the Queen still remains the sovereign and monarch. Connie says, is it normal for Camilla to be included in the opening of Parliament? Yes, if you cast your mind back to when Charles was married to Diana, Diana accompanied him to some of the state openings. Camilla, it's not the first time Camilla has been to a state opening of Parliament. So Catherine has been to one as well. So yeah, it's completely normal for the spouse of someone attending in that capacity to attend as well. And I think Camilla looks beautiful. I love her hats. She was dressed impeccably. The detail, the kind of like diamond detail on the back of her white coat looked incredible. I think she looked really good. I loved the hat. She was wearing a white face mask. Charles was obviously wearing a black face mask as well. The one thing that I thought that I wasn't expecting was, of course, for Charles to take his mother's hand and to lead her in, because of social distancing. It's normal in normal times, but during COVID times, I wasn't expecting it because Charles is not actually in her bubble. But I think they must have had special permission for that to happen from the government, which the government can do. And also, as I said before, they've been vaccinated. They have had COVID tests before, 48 hours before. So the risk is very, very, very minimal. And also, we are fast approaching the point in the UK where we will be allowed to hug and touch our loved ones anyway. So I think there would have been special permission granted in that circumstance. But also, it was, it's quite a long way for the Queen to walk completely with nobody. I'm sure she's perfectly able, but I think it was good that she had an escort and that Charles was there to do that. So I think that was quite good. Hello to everyone who is watching and just joining. Let's have a look. JL says, you are quite correct. Every monarch after Victoria had a consort until now. Well, I'm glad I was correct, because I was hoping that stat was true and correct. Sharon says, yes, they have to keep Her Majesty safe. She looks so sad today, but beautiful. Worried about Charles. I don't think the Queen... Do I think she looks sad? No, I think she was in work mode. I think when you look at the Queen throughout her entire reign, whenever she's doing something official, like a state opening, you don't typically see her beaming with a big beaming smile. She's kind of in work mode. She's very composed. She's in her dutiful mode, and I think that's what we saw today. Perhaps there was a little bit of sadness behind the eyes. Obviously, people expect and accept that 100% and have lots of sympathy for her loss, but I don't think she was like overwhelmingly showing an outward display of emotion. That's not the Queen style. The Queen doesn't do that, and actually it's her ability to almost control her emotions has enabled her to be a very successful monarch, because you don't see her sat there moaning and crying and weeping and not getting on with things and going into perpetual mourning, a little bit sort of Queen Victoria style. The Queen just kind of quietly grieves, privately grieves, doesn't announce anything to the world. She just kind of quietly gets on with it and then channels everything into her work, which I think the British public definitely thank her for. Sarah says, I was amazed at how they adapted to the situation. Yes, it was very stripped back, but it didn't feel like we'd lost anything. All of the main functions that normally happen, for example, black rod, banging the rod on the door that had been slammed shut, everything happened. It was all there. The only difference was, I think, really the amount of people, the ceremonial element, and of course, The carriage ride wasn't there, and the robes, and all that kind of thing. Sarah says this is not unlike the US State of Union address. Well, I don't pretend to know too much about that, so I'm going to take your word for that one. Robert says, did you notice Charles looked up at the picture of Prince Philip on the way out? Yeah, if you can picture the big long room where there are lots of long paintings on, but before the Queen kind of disappears into the robing room, there is a portrait of Her Majesty, and on the other side of the door there is a portrait of Prince Philip. I've been in that room, I've seen them, and also on the wall just next to the Queen there is her father, George VI, all hanging in kind of like a little family unit. The Queen and Charles and Camilla most definitely would have seen the portrait of Philip. It's large, it's looming. On the way back into the robing room, they undoubtedly would have noticed it. I didn't notice whether the Queen, I was looking to see if I could see the camera pick up the Queen, maybe taking a glance. I didn't see it. I also didn't see Charles, but I'm going to go back and have a look because Robert says he noticed Charles looking up at the picture of Philip. But it doesn't surprise me that he would have done because Charles is very emotional, and I think that's probably something that he would have done. Perhaps he was even looking out to actually do that. Yes, the Queen was wearing gloves, as she always does at these state openings, even in a stripped back dress. I'm just kind of going down the comments. Sharon says, do you think she will go up to Balmoral to grieve Prince Philip? Not before her normal time to go to Balmoral. The Queen, obviously, this is typically peak season for the royals. Normally, we'd be having garden parties. We'd have had royal ascot. We'd be having Trooping the Colour coming up. There is a lot of functions of state that still go on at this time. I think the Queen will go to Balmoral. She may even have an extended stay, not entirely sure. But she will go at the normal kind of end of I think it's July, isn't it? No, June or July. She will typically go. I think she'll attend Holyrood Week in Scotland and then come back and then go back for her normal summer stay at Balmoral, and it may be extended, don't know, but I think then she'll return after her Balmoral summer break. I think she will return back to Windsor. In other years, she has gone back to Buckingham Palace, but obviously I think she's pretty much relocated now to Windsor. That is kind of her main residence. She feels safe, comfortable, secure, and it's more like a home. Buckingham Palace is always a little bit like living above a shop. That's where all the kind of functions take place. It's the office. It's basically the big, massive royal office. Yes, she's got lovely apartments at the rear of Buckingham Palace, but that big, massive palace is not really inhabited by her. She doesn't use every single room. She kind of has like a nice little suite of apartments at the back of the palace overlooking the beautiful gardens. But it's really kind of normally, I think Philip described it as like living above the shop, whereas Windsor is a lot more like home. So I think, and also she's got more family as well that way on. She's got the Wessexes, she's got the Yorks, she would have had Harry and Meghan if they'd still been living at Frogmore. So there's a lot more kind of family that happens there. Also, she's got her horses. There's a lot more going on for the Queen at Windsor to keep her happy rather than being at the palace, and I don't think people begrudge her that. But also, everything that pretty much happens at Buckingham Palace can happen at Windsor. She has held state banquets at Windsor, so she's received foreign presidents or prime ministers or dignitaries at Windsor, and a lot of people are still very impressed by arriving at a castle, one of the largest royal inhabited castles in the world. So it's still most very, very, very impressive. Is a Queen at the Buckingham Palace now? No, she will have returned to Windsor. Robert says, yes, it was a slight turn, an upward glance towards the right, towards the picture. I didn't notice the Queen look. I will have to go back and check and see if I can see what you saw. Right. Oh, towards the left. Yes, it would have been towards the left. So let me just go back and see if there's anything else that I've missed about today's ceremonial. Um, I mean, I'm kind of hoping that next year we get to see the carriage procession again. I kind of want things to return to normal, but also it is very interesting to see how the state opening of Parliament has been done very differently. Um, yeah, I don't really think there is anything that I haven't really mentioned. No, so I'm going to throw open any last sort of comments and questions from you. Just as a special note, I'm just reading some notes. There were 17 members of the Lords, the House of Lords, and 17 MPs in the Royal Gallery. Normally, it's packed and full, so it was greatly, greatly, greatly reduced, most definitely. Right, I'm going to go back and see if there's any comment. Oh, I was going to read a bit about the Imperial State Crown, wasn't I? So, this is my little Christmas tree decoration version, so it's not exactly correct. Normally, there's like a big, massive diamond, then we've got the Prince's ruby on the side. So, normally, imagine this is the real one. It is measures 31.5 centimeters tall and weighs 1.06 kilograms, which is 2.3 pounds in weight, and has 4 fleur-de-lis and 4 crosses supporting 2 arches topped by a monde and cross pate. It's got purple velvet cap and is trimmed with ermine. By the way, you may have seen a cap being carried on a stick, on a rod. That was the cap of maintenance, and it symbolises way, way back when the Pope used to show favour on a monarch. They would normally give them a cap of maintenance. So we still carry it in front of us. There was also the sword of state as well. And they obviously have their own carriages because they are the symbols of state. The monarch is obviously the human incumbent. She is the human representation of the state, but the actual kind of symbols of state, the imperial state crown, the cap of maintenance, the sword of state, are all important enough to have their own carriage ride. If I say anything else, notable stones are St Edward's sapphire on the top crosses, reputedly taken from the ring of Edward the Confessor when he was reinterred at Westminster Abbey in 1163. The Black Prince's ruby, which is actually a large spinel on the front cross. And in 1909, the 104 carat, 21 gram Stuart sapphire sat on the front of the crown, was moved to the back and replaced by the 317 carat Cullinan II diamond. Below the monde hang 4 pearls, 3 of which are often said to have belonged to Queen Elizabeth I, but the association is almost certainly erroneous rather. So if you can imagine this is not the Imperial State Crown, this is St Edward's Crown. I've just kind of realised I've got the wrong one. I know some of you will be thinking, oh my goodness, that's not the Imperial State Crown. The Queen wears the Imperial State Crown. This is St Edward's Crown. This is the one that she was crowned with. Well, actually, she wore both on the coronation, but this is the St Edward's Crown that was actually placed when she was declared Queen. This, however, is the George IV state diadem. Normally, she would wear this in the carriage to the state opening of Parliament, and at the last opening of Parliament, she actually wore this while she was seated giving the speech, because the Imperial State Crown was being borne in front of her. Now, I can't wear this one because it's too small. It's not actually to scale. This is kind of more the size, I suppose, of like Queen Victoria's small diamond crown. But yes, it's still kind of a smaller replica. So I've got my other one on today, but there we go. So it's basically a beautiful, beautiful crown that is probably worth millions and millions and millions. Christine says, I have to admit, I kind of missed her wearing the crown and state robes. Me too, but I can understand why. Why is the violet robe of a state never worn? Do you mean the one that she wore to her coronation? Well, she does. Let me just kind of find a previous one. Let me just, there we go, hang on. Oop. I'll just find an image for you, because let me see if this is the one that that you're meaning. So if you have a look here, you can see a previous year, and you can see that the Queen is wearing a red robe. So normally that is the one that she would wear, but obviously she hasn't worn it today because of all the COVID restrictions and everything being stripped back. I think it wouldn't have looked right having the Queen in full ceremonial when there wasn't the amount of ceremonial, guards and everything going on. There were trumpeters. There were trumpeters, which I kind of appreciated, the socially distanced trumpeters. Oh, not that one. It's because that was her coronation one, and of course it was made specifically for the coronation, and I do believe it's on display in the Jewel House at the Tower of London. Because I'm thinking back, I remember seeing it when I was there. Yes, Rebecca, she's come up with an interesting fact. The Queen has opened Parliament all but 2 times, which of course when she was pregnant with Princess Anne and Prince Andrew and Prince Edward in 1959 and 1963. So yes, the Queen has attended all the other state openings of Parliament. Chris says, if I remember correctly, the speech the Queen gives is, yes, the speech is by the government of the day. Sharon says, wow, that's a heavy crown. It is indeed. So you can kind of understand why she hasn't been wearing it in recent years. Gaming Nerd says, how long do you think the Queen will be in mourning? She's no longer in official mourning. The official, the Queen stipulated that she wanted the mourning period to be 2 weeks. So that's obviously ended. So officially, she's not in mourning. Although she will be privately grieving. Gilbert says, we must admire the Queen's dedication to duty and country. Even while mourning her dearly beloved husband, younger royals have much to learn about this wonderful Queen indeed. Right, and I think that's basically everything for now. So, if you've enjoyed this video and you found it useful, then please give it a big old thumbs up. Don't forget to share on social media, and also do hit the bell so that you know whenever I upload a new video. So from me in Shropshire, mwah, to you all, and goodbye.